Very good morning to all of you. The last time I was here, whatever 11 months and how many ever days ago, I said very nice things about the magazine which I had the occasion to preview. Today let me begin by saying very nice things about the theme you have selected. And there's a reason for it. In a globalized world, I think we often, when we talk of our external engagement, especially our economic engagement, we tend to really focus on trade. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But we often neglect work and the mobility associated with work. Just to give you a sense of what it is to which we don't pay enough attention. Last year, remittances to India were $135 billion. That's about roughly twice our exports to the United States. Now, it's just the remittances. Because think of the people abroad, their own livelihood, the assets they have created there, the services which have been generated in India, the second, third order consequences of all this. And I leave it to you to actually imagine what is the size of this business which is called mobility. And I put it to you, it is clearly multiple X times the remittance. Now, that's the positive side. There's also, like in life, a downside to it. Because when mobility is legal, when mobility is formal, then it has a whole lot of beneficial impacts, which I will talk about. But when it is not, then I think it is actually almost a magnet for every kind of bad business to be associated with it. So if you look at trafficking per se, all the associated crimes, and often it leads people with agendas of various kinds, political agendas, separatist agendas, they all join up to the illegal mobility side of it. So the very fact that you have today recognized the importance of mobility, for me, is a cause of satisfaction. Now, obviously, there are two aspects to this mobility, or three aspects to this mobility. One is demography. I mean, there are places where there's demand, but there aren't enough people. The demography and the demand are mismatched. The second, to some degree, is competitiveness and talent, that other people offer something which makes it worth, the while of the hosting society to get them. And the third is actually social attitudes towards work, which is, in many cases, there may be people, but they don't want to do that particular kind of work, or they don't want to do it at that cost, in that number, under those conditions. So, the fact is, today, mobility is an increasingly important factor of the international economy. Now, we know there is a market for mobility. But I think from the viewpoint of the government, there are three consequences which emerge from that. One, how can we be enablers of mobility? How can we improve the skill sets of people who are potentially mobile? How can we provide them with the facilities to make them mobile? The second, arrangements, formal arrangements, sometimes between governments and companies, enterprises. And the third, to the people who are mobile, who go out of the country. How do you equip them with the confidence and the assurance to operate in a global workplace? So, in a sense, it begins from creating a global workforce, preparing a global workforce at home, and then ensuring when the workforce is actually deployed in the workplace, that it is done so as efficiently and as securely as possible. So I actually want to share with you today some of the things which have happened in the last 10 years, because particularly to the Indians in the room, many of you would take it for granted, or many of you, may not even be aware of it. But these are actually very deep changes which have been of great impact when it comes to mobility. 10 years ago, if you wanted a passport, there were, I think, 77 places in India to which you could apply. Today, in the last 10 years, we have added 468 more such places. So pretty much any citizen of India is actually today able to apply for a passport by journeying at best a few hours, as compared to what it was 10 years ago, when actually you had to make a trip to, if not a metropolis, at least to a good-sized town, and probably spend a few days in order to just get a passport. So this expansion of actually a passport, because passport is where your mobility begins, international mobility begins. Moving on from that, getting a passport used to be a very hard challenge in this country. I mean, I tell people, when many of us, I see Vikas Sarup sitting here, when many of us actually joined the Foreign Service, people in your locality said, aha, we now know someone who will help us get a passport. Okay. Today, nobody even talks about it. In fact, if somebody doesn't get a passport within a week or 10 days, I get some pretty angry social media comments. So, the speed at which we do passports, the clarity of documentation, we've actually streamlined it. And, when we speak today about digital governance, in fact, in many ways, it is our passport program which is the poster child of digital governance. Now, it isn't just in India. We also used to have a situation where if you lost your passport, it was very difficult to get it replaced or renewed abroad. And if you lived in one country, you couldn't get it done in another country. Now, that's gone. Just like in India, you can today apply for a passport anywhere, because we know people are also internally mobile. So you don't have to go to your home state or your district or your hometown to actually renew your passport or apply for your passport. You can do it from anywhere. The fifth one is actually when people are abroad, they will have problems. There has to be a channel to address those problems. And, it cannot be episodic, it cannot be, I know somebody so I complain and they look at me. There's got to be a system to it. And again, one of the big changes is a portal we started about little more than 10 years ago, called Madad, which means help. It's an acronym. And just to give you a sense of how much that portal is being used, I was clearing Parliament questions for the week. Tomorrow and day after are my Parliament days. In the last 3 years, only in the Gulf, we actually have addressed 138,000 grievances using the Madad portal. So that gives you the kind of scale of both the demand and the ability today to respond. Now, another, I would say, mechanism which we actually have expanded its usage is something called the Indian Community Welfare Fund. We collect a cess on passport and consular services, and that is used to address the needs of people who are in distress. And again, I'm just giving you a figure because I was looking at it early this morning for my Parliament questions. In the last 3 years, 238,000 people have benefited from the use of this Community Welfare Fund. These are people for whom we may have bought tickets back home, who had legal cases abroad. In some cases, they may have passed away, so their last rites were done. There'll be a variety of stuff. So the point I'm making is that when we speak about mobility, it isn't a question of giving a speech and telling people, it's a great idea and, we have comparative advantages and we should be going out. Unless you back it up with a whole lot of practical steps on the ground, unless you actually, as I say, prepare a workforce, equip a workforce, secure a workforce outside, you are actually not doing justice to the issue of mobility. And sometimes it can be exhortative as well. We often today make it almost an SOP to visit labor camps. I mean, I think even when the Prime Minister goes abroad, particularly to the Gulf countries, you would often see him making it a point to actually visit a camp where people are working on site. Often it's a construction site or a big service site. And, when that starts from the very top, I think the rest of the system certainly gets the message. And this combination, the combination of doing things physically, of using, digital platforms. I spoke about grievances. Even for consular services, when you live abroad, you need attestations of various kinds. You need people to certify documents of various kinds. Today we have a program called E-Seva, where most people upload it online, they get their reply online. So the embrace of digital mediums, the creation of a physical infrastructure, the improvement of services, the motivation that is given, all of this today is actually preparing a global workforce. Now, having said that, things do go wrong, and one of them, unfortunately, are conflicts. So, for a country today, which has really millions of people working abroad, we cannot afford to be impassive or agnostic when there is a conflict. So, it has become, in a way, for us, I won't even say it's a duty or obligation. We take it as a standard procedure that if there is a conflict, the moment we see that coming, our systems get ready to go to secure our people. And again, in the last 3 years, and I'm talking after Ukraine, Ukraine, roughly we brought back 20,000 people. In the last 3 years, we've actually brought back 28,000 people from different conflict zones. So this kind of gives you the kind of scale of the responsibility which happens, when you have a mobile global economy and a mobile workforce which is operating in that economy. Now, having said that, let me deal with other aspects of it, the diplomatic aspects of it. Clearly today, intergovernmental agreements dealing with mobility are a very important part of our diplomacy. We have 21 such agreements, in addition to which we have mobility provisions in some of the free trade agreements that we have done. And we certainly, in many relationships, see that as actually adding a new dimension to the relationship. I see the ambassador of Japan sitting in front of me. When Prime Minister Modi this year went for the annual summit, the understanding that we have for a greater flow of talent from India to Japan in various professions was very much a centerpiece of that visit. Moving on from that, all this would happen, as I said, if we actually prepare a workforce, we better prepare a workforce. So the emphasis that we have on skilling in India, which is of course dealt with by a different ministry, but we are really part of a whole. I mean, we are you can say the external face of the mobility, but the back office of the mobility is actually the educational and the skilling system. And today the attention which is being given to improving skilling and actually customizing it where possible to the needs of a potential user is something which is important. Now, recognizing all of this, of course, we are also in the process of rewriting our legislation, which underpins mobility. We have the current legislation is more than 40 years old, and it envisaged mobility. Actually, the very name was, it was an Immigration Act. Whereas today, we see it much more as a mobility, because we see it as a two-way process. The people who go out often do come back, sometimes for shorter duration, sometimes for longer ones. So we have an overseas mobility bill today, which we have put out there for public comments. It is something, when we are ready, we propose to bring in as a legislation. Now, so far I have spoken about the mobility of people, but I also want to highlight that work can also be mobile. That, if the talent doesn't go out, the out comes to the talent. And we have actually seen this growth of what are called global capability centers in the last few years. I understand today that there are in this country about 1,700 global capability centers, which are about half, they constitute about half the global capability centers in the world. And these are centers where global business has found it more effective, more efficient, really to send the business out and to utilize the talent in a different geography. And obviously, given the availability of the talent and the efficiency of it in India, we are a strong attractor of that. Again, there are estimates that about 2 million people are currently employed in global capability centers. And I think the rough revenue estimates which people put for global capability centers is somewhere between $65 to $75 billion currently a year. And looking ahead, I mean, certainly as we are moving to an era of AI, of higher skills, of advanced manufacturing, and also of, as I said, of social services of various kinds, we do anticipate a world which will put a greater premium on mobility. And we see ourselves, we are 1/6 of the world's population. But I think if you look in terms of the younger working age population, we would be somewhere between 1/6 and 1/4, would be closer to 1/4 actually of the global workforce of a certain demography. So our relevance to the global talent skill market is actually only going to grow with all of this. And having said all of that, I also recognize that mobility has its own politics. It has its politics in the receiving society, in the hosting society as well. Managing that is also part of the diplomatic challenge, something that we are gearing up to do. So these were some of the thoughts I thought I would share with you today, taking advantage of the theme and the occasion. Once again, thank you for inviting me to speak at the opening, and I look forward to the conversation with Professor Rajamohan.